Good evening, everyone, staff, and commissioners. The regular meeting of the Planning Commission is called to order. We will now take a moment for silence prayer and followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And our Commissioner, Nicholas, will lead us. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by our commissioners. Nicholas?
Please turn and face the flag and hand over your hearts. Ready to begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, Joanne. Could you please roll call?
Commissioner Becerra? Here. Commissioner Lewis?
Here.
Chair Hang?
Here. Approval of minutes. Tonight we have the minutes of regular Planning Commission meeting, which is of the June 25th, August 13th, and October 22 of 2024. Does anyone have any changes to any of the minutes presented? There are no changes. All three sets of minutes are adopted as present. If there are no changes, the minutes are adopted as amended. Oral communications. Would anyone like to speak on an item that is not on agenda? No? Okay. We don't have any more things. So tonight we have no items on the consent calendar. So we will proceed to the public hearing. So for tonight we have 3 items, hearing items. So the first will be 3550 East Cameron Avenue, followed by the second item, which is precise plan for PPC is 1800 East Garvey Avenue and 200 South Azusa Avenue. And then the last item would be citywide code amendment changes. Joanne, who will present staff meeting?
Item number 2, the first public hearing item will be presented by Miriam Machado, Associate Planner.
Good evening. This is item number 2 on tonight's agenda. The requests presented are conditional use permit number 24-05, administrative use permit number 24-06, and subcommittee design review number 24-27 for the property located at 3550 East Cameron Avenue. The conditional use permit is required to allow the construction of a large home. The administrative use permit is required to allow the construction of a 2-story home. The subcommittee design review is required for the architectural review of the proposed residence. The project site is 1.06 acre, and the proposed square footage of the residence is 13,340 square feet. The property is zoned residential single family and sits along East Cameron Avenue and is surrounded by other residential properties. This is the proposed site plan, which shows the proposed 2-story residence. The closest front setback sits at 31 feet 2 inches. The closest rear setback sits at 30 feet 8 inches. The closest west side setback sits at 14 feet, and the closest east side setback sits at 14 feet 10 inches. Here are is the proposed project information in comparison to the municipal code development standards. The municipal code allows for the development of 8,000 square feet by right. However, the maximum unit size may be increased by more than 25%, subject to the approval of a conditional use permit, which is currently being requested for the proposed 13,300 square foot residence. The maximum lot coverage and floor area ratio is 35% for both. As currently proposed, the lot coverage is 21% and the floor area ratio is 31%. All of the minimum setbacks are being met. The maximum building height is 25 feet. However, lots located in Area District 5 and that are larger than 20,000 square feet are permitted to exceed the maximum height limit by a 1-to-1 ratio with no more than 32 feet. For each foot in height that's being increased, the minimum yard setbacks are also increased. The proposed residence is 29 feet in height, and as such, the minimum setbacks were increased, which are shown in the chart here, which are all being met. This is the subterranean floor plan, which shows the 8-car garage. This is the lower level floor plan, which primarily shows a wine cellar and storage room, a gym room, a recording studio, and 2 bathrooms. The entry level floor plan shows a 2-car garage, a workshop, a family room, a dining room, great room, and kitchen, a library, 3 bedrooms, 2 of which are 2 stories, and 3 bathrooms. This is the second level floor plan. The proposed project also includes the construction of an attached ADU, which is what's shown to the left of the property. However, that portion specifically is not within the purview of the Planning Commission, but is shown on here for reference. The second level of the primary residence shows 2 of the bedrooms that were shown on the entry level that are 2-story, as well as 2 additional bedrooms and 4 bathrooms. We have the north and south elevations, the east and west elevations. Planning staff recommends adopting resolution number 24-6152, approving conditional use permit 2404, resolution 24-6153, approving administrative use permit number 2406, and approving subcommittee design review number 24-27. This does conclude my presentation. The applicant is here tonight, who has also prepared a presentation to share with you all tonight. Thank you.
Does any commissioners have questions for all staff at this moment? If none, now I will move. Actually, we'll open open public hearing. I have quite a few cards, I believe. So for the first one, it's going to be, I'm sorry, I think it's Ted Du. Come up.
Good evening. My name is Chadu Chijindu. I'm an architect, and I'm the principal of Gradientscape Architecture. For this design, we were trying to work with the existing context and push forward a design that worked with the scaling terrain there. Next slide, please. Essentially, the slope ascends to 60 feet from Cameron Avenue to the top of towards the rear of the property. The design tried to allow for a 2-story residence despite the steep terrain. Next slide, please. As shown by Miriam, the initial design tried to create various courtyards. Sorry, it's hard to see from here. So we have 4 courtyards in total. One towards Cameron Avenue, which has a pool. One towards the west side, which has a private court for the living area. One towards the entryway, which allows for a private court for the entry guests. And the motor court towards the left of the screen. Next slide, please. In terms of the size of the residence, the 13,000 square feet is essentially divided by two. The majority of it is below grade, and it's challenging to see from the street. So from the street, you see a two-story residence upon the elevated grade. If you look to the right, you see the entry point on Cameron Avenue, and it slowly transcends up to the rear of the site, which is over 50 feet. Next slide. The entire focus of the project was to exploit the courtyards. So the house in itself is pretty thin. It's designed as a row house in theory. So at the top, you will see it's almost 26 feet in width. And when it's going up the hillside, it's sort of climbing the terrain in which the courtyards are preserved. Next slide, please. This is a rendering showing the intention of the residence. Around the facade is going to be planted various trees. On plan, I have over 300 trees that are going to be planted. But the overall concept is to have a mountain stone house emerging from the landscape. Next slide. From the entry side, that goes to the lower court. And in terms of the facade here, trying to create a tropical feel in which the trees begin to engulf the site. And the motor court and the actual building is somewhat obscured, so it increases the range of privacy. Next slide. And this is the rendition of the structure itself being surrounded by trees and allowing for transparency with the amount of glass and stonework. That's it.
Does any commissioners have questions for our architect here? No? Then we hear from, is there another applicant that'd like to speak for the project? If not, we're going to move to Michelle Chan. Is there, oh, she's on the way? Yeah, she's the applicant, you know? No? Okay, gotcha. Okay. We have, the next would be Saul King. Oh.
Everybody. First of all, I want to compliment.
Can you speak to the speakers and pull it down a little?
First
Thank
of all,
you.
I want to say hi to everybody, and I want to
Yeah. Yes.
compliment our architects. My questions to this house is, it is so huge compared to our neighbor. Okay, because I'm kind of represent the whole block. This is a big unit, and it carry a lot of space. And my concern is the traffic when we build, because it's almost like an easement road, and we have 7 houses sharing the road. And if such a big, massive house over there, how's the traffic considerations for the in and out? And right now, the most impact to myself is in California, the insurance is canceling insurance because of the fire. And the big reason they're canceling insurance is a lot of trees. And we have to cut tree to please the insurance. And right now, we are proposing a house, a big, massive house at the entrance of the road with a lot of trees. I just want to find out whether any environmental report study, how is our insurance going to affect us? Because I don't know about you guys. My house, the insurance calling it due, they will not extend the insurance, fire insurance and homeowner insurance. It affecting everybody in Southern California now. Okay, so that's my main concern is the trees and the entrance and the proposed construction time, because when the construction truck during the process of building, how does it affect us? Because it's only one way in, one way out. What if there's a fire? How are we going to issue that? So all those things come into my mind to the environmental issue. That's why I want somebody to study that. And another issue I have is the height issue. I would like to see, because my house is right above, I want to have a stick to just post to see how is it affect our view of the neighborhood. That's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you. So the hearing testimony from applicant, those in favor, and then those opposed. We have the next person is Franklin.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Franklin Iraeta, and I am also live in that part of the neighborhood. After speaking to all of the neighbors, first off, we want to compliment the architect on his design. We believe it's a beautiful house. Even though we have a couple of suggestions or actually concerns about the size of the house and pretty much also in concerns of the house being the first house on the street in order to go in. So our first concern would be the construction, the vehicle parking, and how is that going to be mitigated as far as when this big house is being built and everybody needs to go into that small road to access their own homes. The second question we do have concerns about is fire safety. So similar to Susanna, who just went up, we are concerned about the mitigation of the construction and also the fire, how it's supposed to be affecting the homes around and also the size of the home. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Michelle's not here yet, so if none, I guess I'm gonna. Is Michelle here yet? Anyone in favor of the project besides the architect and the homeowner? Okay, we're going to close public hearing right now.
Chair, if I may, the applicant can speak as a rebuttal.
Would you like to come back and speak for the rebuttal? Thank you.
Hi there. Yeah, I understand their concerns regarding the trees. All the trees that are selected are approved by LA County Fire Department, so they're actually better for the hillside. They help to retain the hillside. In terms of the height limit, we are within the standards per West Covina municipal code, and also the neighbors' sight lines are actually protected, as the residence has a difference of 5 feet from the neighbor to the west, and the house that she's mentioning, Susanna, she has clear view over the house, at least over 25 feet. What was the other comment? Oh, in terms of traffic, the house is meant to be private, so the garages are set where it can't be seen from the single street going into the space. So essentially the residents will drive through the gate into the garage and go into the residence. There is no roadway that's going to be blocked when they're going into their home. In terms of construction, it's going to meet standard practices for construction. It's going to be steel framed. It's going to have concrete decking, and it's actually going to be a type 3 structure, which is actually better for the hillside than the typical type 5 that's wood framed. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any commissioners have questions for our architect? If not, I'll be closing public hearing. And open commission discussion. Commissioner Lewis, do you want to? You good? Commissioner Becerra?
No, I mean, I think as a resident, as a neighbor of the subject property, I think that I would have some of those concerns as well, but nowhere believe in LA County has been declared FEMA disaster area, so I think everyone collectively has had their insurance increase, and so I'm not sure that that would be a valid point, but I think he addressed the traffic issue, and you can see from the picture, they're just going straight into their garage area, so I don't think that we have a problem with any of those items.
I have a few questions for staff. Just curious in terms of the size of the houses around the neighborhood. You have 4,000 square foot and 3,600 square foot. In terms of floor area ratio, it's about 9% to 8% versus this one is coming up to 31%. Is that the average homes, or how many homes that do you have the facility in?
There were 12 properties that were surveyed, so immediately around the property that I believe includes the properties of some of the speakers today that were included in the average floor area in terms of square footage and ratio. So it included homes in the immediate vicinity and across the street.
I noticed that I think this is one of the last house that's actually located in West Covina. So your data is basically mainly in West Covina.
It included the properties that are also in Covina and the unincorporated area. So I didn't do just West Covina. I included all the properties around, which included the properties in Covina and unincorporated LA.
Okay, thank you. I have questions for the architect as well. Regarding, can you come up, please? Regarding the heights of the constructions, one of our neighbors had mentioned that potentially blocking or how high it is compared relatively to their lots or their home. I know that area is pretty much hillside. And I'm not sure, because there's one right next to it, I think to the west.
The west, yes. That, and I spoke with that neighbor. Essentially, the design had the house about 5 feet lower from the top of her roof. So it's actually lower on her side. And the other houses, the view and the sight lines are not affected at all.
So you mentioned your top of the roof would be 5 feet. The highest on your lot is 5 feet below their roof, or
correct.
Their...
So her roof line's up here. That's top of the roof that you're seeing over there is like right here. Because the hillside descends or ascends almost 50 feet. So I set a pad almost halfway through the hillside to have it lower. I could have had it by right at her level, but it would have blocked all of her view. But I dropped it so she has a view from her second floor.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Sure.
I think that's it. Does any commission have any questions or for staff or for the architect or residents? Any more discussions? I'm sorry, the public hearing has closed. You know, and since everyone's here, I'm going to open up the public hearing again. Come on up. I'm sorry, you come up. Are you Michelle? Hi.
So I'm a resident, co-resident with Susanna right here. So I have a question in terms of, I understand it's a single occupancy house, but in the future, if it does convert, would there be the chance that it would be converted to a rental or multi-property occupancy without any public notice, or is there a chance that that could happen? That would be my question to raise to the committee.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
That'll be it for now.
Thank you. Anyone else that come for in favors or oppose the project? Seeing none.
Chair, if I may, since a member of the public came up, the architect or the applicant would ask.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to call the architect back if he want to answer that question.
Yeah, I understand her concern, but it's a private residence, so it's going to remain private for whoever is going to live there. The ADU by right can be rented out, so that is an option. But as of now, it's just going to be an ADU. But the house is going to remain a private residence.
Since you're here, and Joanne, perhaps you can help answer questions that I may have. The 13,000 plus square foot, does that include the ADU or does not?
It does not include the ADU. The ADU is allowed by right per state law, so it's not under the Planning Commission's purview.
Thank you. Thank you. I will close public hearing again and open commission discussion. Anyone else has? Seeing none, anyone has a motion?
Motion to approve.
Going to say I'll motion to adopt resolution number 26-6153, approving administrative use permit number 26-06, and approve resolution number 24-6152, approving additional conditional use permit number 25-05.
Second.
Wait.
It's just for clarification, just for a clear record, that's all.
Commissioner Becerra has a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I think we already have. I think we already have my motion, and she seconded, so I think we're good.
Roll call. Commissioner Becerra?
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
Aye.
Chair Hang?
I guess. Aye.
Motion approved, 3-0.
This decision is final unless appealed to the City Council within 10 days. Thank you. So we're moving on to item number 3. Joanne, who will present the staff report?
Miriam Machado, Associate Planner, will be presenting the staff report.
Hello. Tonight we have precise plan number 2401 and zone change number 2401 for the properties located at 1800 East Garvey Avenue and 200 South Avenue, Azusa Avenue. The precise plan being requested is to allow the construction of an 85,390 square foot dealership building. The zone change being requested is to alter a portion of the project site currently zoned neighborhood commercial mixed use to service commercial mixed use within the Auto Plaza overlay zone. The overall project site is 156,286 square feet. The existing zones, as mentioned, are service commercial mixed use and neighborhood commercial mixed use, both within the Auto Plaza overlay zone. The property sits on the northeast corner of South Azusa Avenue and East Garvey Avenue and is surrounded by commercial uses. Based on the findings of the initial study, this project would not result in significant environmental impacts. Mitigation measures will be required to reduce impacts to a less than significant level. Accordingly, a mitigated negative declaration, or M&D for short, will be adopted. The project site is not included on any list of hazardous materials facilities, waste properties, or waste disposal sites. In compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, known as CEQA, an M&D was prepared by Ultra Systems and will be considered prior to the approval of the project. The M&D serves as a finding that the project would not have a significant effect on the environment, with the incorporation of the mitigation measures as appropriate. This is the proposed site plan. The parcel highlighted in red here is the portion that would be rezoned from neighborhood commercial mixed use to service commercial mixed use if approved. The yellow or orange outline here shows the building footprint. There will be 4 access points to the property. One of the driveway access points is along South Azusa Avenue, and the other 3 are along East Garvey Avenue. On the first floor, there will be a pre-owned showroom, a vehicle delivery area, detail bays, a few offices, a lunchroom, a customer lounge room, and a few restrooms. The second floor will have a showroom as well, with multiple offices throughout, a conference room and training room, an employee lounge room, and a few restrooms as well. This is the north rendering of the proposed dealership building. This would be the view from the Interstate 10 freeway. This is the south rendering, which will be the primary customer entrance. This is the east rendering viewing from East Garvey Avenue, and the west rendering from the South Azusa Avenue view. Planning staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt resolution numbers 24-6154, 6155, and 6156, recommending to the City Council approval of precise plan number 2401, zone change number 2401, and certification of the M&D. Thank you. We do have the applicant present here tonight if we have any questions for the applicant. Thank you.
Okay, I will open public hearings. We will be hearing testimony from applicant and those in favor, and then those who oppose. I think I have one card from Linda Francis.
Good evening. My name is Linda Francis. I'm the architect on the project with Dennis Flynn Architects. We've been working for quite some time with staff, and I just want to take the opportunity to thank Joanne and Miriam. They've been a tremendous amount of help for us, and we've enjoyed the process. They're just very enjoyable to work with. Envision Motors is very excited to bring this project to West Covina. It'll be the second facility, I believe, with this image for Mercedes in Southern California. The first one just recently opened in Escondido by Envision Motors. And Mercedes is very excited about the facilities, how they look, and we hope West Covina is also as proud as Mercedes is. Miriam covered most of everything about the project, so I'm just here to answer questions if you have any.
I don't have any cards for opposing the project. guess I'm going to close the public hearing now since we don't have any opposing. So I'm going to open commission discussion. Commissioner Becerra, do you have any?
No, I was just curious if I didn't catch it in the first staff recommendation or explanation of. Now, will the service area that's on the other side of the freeway, will that be combined with this building as well, or will they both still be separate?
So actually, that's a really good question. This is a unique model for Mercedes. The service center will stay intact as it is. That one was also recently remodeled with the new image for Mercedes. All the service activities will stay over there. Service vehicles will still be received on the other side of the freeway. This property will predominantly be, will all be sales. There will be quite a few EV charging stations. Mercedes is really big on it. This dealer Envision Motors is very excited about electric vehicle charging. On the first level, that lounge that Miriam was pointing out is if you are charging your electric vehicle, it's a lounge specifically set aside for relaxing, catching refreshments, going to the restroom, and charging your vehicle, especially since we're so close to the freeway there. So that's just something a vision that Envision Motors has. That's a pun, but I didn't realize that. There's some detailing, but that is detailing of the new vehicles. So it's not detailing service vehicles. And there's some Sprinter sales. So there's an area where it's a larger showroom just for Sprinters. And the owner wanted to bring a lot of the pre-owned vehicles indoors so he controls the climate so it's more enjoyable. And he really wants to celebrate being on the freeway in West Covina, so he put the showroom up on the second level, which is very unusual. So when you enter the lobby on the first level, it'll be this grand foyer open to the second floor showroom. So it's really unique. So I'm glad you asked. It's a very unique concept, and it's actually going to be one of a kind. So
Sounds beautiful.
yeah.
Commissioner Lewis, do you have any questions? Or?
No, I'll go ahead and motion to adopt resolution number 24-6154, approving precise plan number 21-01. I believe that should be 24-01, and zone change number 24-01, pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act of 1970. And then, do we need to do separate motions for each of these? Okay. As well as adopting resolution number 24-6155, approving precise plan number 24-01, as well as adopting resolution number 24-6156, adopting zone change number 24-01.
Staff, I have a quick question, though. This resolutions of the Planning Commission, it is a recommendation to the City Council for approval of the zone change. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. Joanne, could you please roll call?
Commissioner Becerra?
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis?
Aye.
Chair Hang?
Aye.
3-0, motion passes.
Final action of this matters will take place before the City Council on a date to be determined. We're moving on to item number 4. Its location is citywide. The project includes amendments to change to Chapter 26, Development Code of the city's municipal code, which is to make corrections and incorporate require updates to comply with state law, and the commercial portion of the planned community development number 1, which is PCD-1 for the West Covina portion of Woodside Villages to make development within the PCD-1 zoning, consistent with the current zoning. The proposed code amendment is exempt from the California Environment Quality Code, which is CEQA. Joanne, who will be presenting?
I will be delivering the presentation.
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and start with the presentation. Good evening. On the projector is a development code update timeline. The development code process started in 2021. Community meetings and subcommittee meetings were held as part of that process. It was ultimately adopted by the City Council in February 2024 and took effect March 2024. When it was adopted, it was understood that we would go back to clean it up if there were any changes required or necessary. Throughout the process, the city was working with the state and updating the housing element. On September 18th, 2024, HCD sent the city a letter stating that the housing element certification is pending in awaiting the adoption of certain code amendments that they are requiring prior to certifying us. On the projector is some of the required changes that HCD is requiring prior to certification of the city's housing element. Section 16 of the ordinance, the state is requiring that all multifamily residential zones have a minimum lot size or a minimum lot size not to exceed 20,000 square feet. So we can't, for new multifamily residential zones, we can't require them to have more than 20,000 square feet for it to be developed. For Section 17, they want to ensure that the city would allow multifamily residential projects with at least a 20% total dwelling unit reserved for lower income households to be allowed by right, and that's subject to a deed restriction. Section 18, emergency shelters. The state requires that emergency shelters allowed in commercial zones, not just in manufacturing zones by right. So you have to actually pick at least one commercial zone that allows for emergency shelters by right. So this has been identified in the housing element as the regional mixed-use zone. The regional mixed-use zone currently encompass the Eastland Center and the businesses along Restaurant Row. In Section 24, there's Table 32 or Table 3-2. The state does not allow or is asking the city to modify the parking requirements for emergency shelters and not to require more than one parking space per staff member. And in addition to this, they are requiring us to consolidate all the multifamily residential use type to one use, not to separate it by condos or multifamily apartments or multifamily mixed use, just have one set standard. And the minimum that they selected is one covered parking space per studio unit, 1.5 per one bedroom unit, and 2 spaces for 2 bedrooms or larger units, and 1 guest parking space for each 4 units. Another change that Section 25 reflects what the table that I had mentioned earlier in the previous slide. In Section 32, they're not allowing us to require bicycle parking. And the most that we can require is 1 parking space per staff member, as shown on the previous slide on the table. Going back to the previous slide, another item that's not part of the HCD required changes is in the same parking table. CUP, as required by CUP has been deleted and replaced by the precise plan CUP or other entitlements as approved by the Planning Commission or City Council, because some of the uses listed does not require CUP, but may require precise plan or another entitlement. And it's not just limited to CUPs. We are also making changes that are related to new state laws. So these are minor changes that we're able to make in this cleanup. Other changes are coming, but they will be reviewed by the Planning Commission and the City Council separately because they're much larger code amendments. AB 2904 requires the increased public notification period from 10 days to 20 days for code amendments, zone changes, and general plan amendments. In SB 1211, it requires cities to increase the allowed detached ADUs for multifamily from 2 units to 8 units, or 1 per primary unit, whichever is less. So basically, if an apartment complex has 4 units, they're allowed up to 4 additional detached units as ADUs. But if they have 40 units, then they're only allowed 8. It's capped at 8 detached ADU units. The revisions to the Planned Community Development Zone. So this section involves in the PCD1 code, in the commercial section, it references the city's neighborhood commercial section as the base zoning for all commercial areas in the PCD1. So that neighborhood commercial zone is no longer in the city's code and has been replaced by neighborhood commercial mixed use. So this is just making that consistent with the current code and current zoning. Other code update cleanup revisions. We added definitions for new structure and unclassified use permits, which was previously what CUPs were called in the past. So we made that clear. So in case there are any revocation processings or any amendments to previously approved unclassified use permits, there is a process identified in the code for that. So we added that definition so that it is clear. We reinserted the clarification that additions and accessory buildings are required to be consistent in architecture, materials, and color as a primary structure. This was in the previous code, and it was unintentionally left out in the development code update. We added residential agriculture to the zoning designations with the minimum lot sizes in Table 22-3. We added clarification that administrative permits, all accessory structures do not require administrative permits. There are certain accessory structures that are allowed by right or required in a single family residential zone, such as garages that are 2-car garages or 3-car garages that necessarily do not require an administrative permit. And we deleted the urban dwelling units as in this reference because they are considered primary units by the state. We renumbered some portions, corrected some spelling, grammatical errors. We added quantifiable standards for motorhome and recreational vehicles parked on driveways. Previously, it was allowed as long as it doesn't block access to the garage. And so that was a little bit difficult to enforce. And so we added quantifiable standards. So where they can't block greater than 50% of the driveway or block access or use of the primary driveway by other vehicles. We added the community development director and city attorney as initiators to code amendments. There are certain code amendments, like the state required code amendments or driven by state law, that are required to be acted on right away, and we would not have time for certain code standards to take it to the planning commission for an initiation resolution, and then go back to the planning commission for the actual code amendment. So this would save some time and would allow the city to process code amendments. It's just to get it on the agenda. It still requires planning commission review and recommendation to the city council, and it still requires a public hearing adopted by the city council to adopt the actual code amendment. But this is just to get something in the planning commission's agenda. We added regulations regarding glares and reflections from solar panels. We've had issues where certain solar panels on roofs on single-story homes created glare and a glare issue and a reflection issue that blinds people on the second floor of a neighboring house. And there are certain concerns that solar panels that are going to be constructed on hillsides may have impacts, glare or reflection impacts on vehicles driving. So we added this standards addressing that, and then we made certain revisions for state law consistency. One thing that we added is the hillside massing, which allows the height to be, because right now the height is measured from lowest grade to the highest point. And this may come as a challenge for people building along hillside lots, because it encourages cut and fill and constructions of larger retaining walls and building on top of the slope rather than along it. So it allows a maximum overall height from lowest grade to the highest point to 35 feet, providing that no area in the perimeter of the house exceeds 25 feet in height. So I found this diagram online that kind of shows what we're trying to accomplish. It would be the top photograph minus the story at the bottom or the top, because we do not allow up to 3 stories. We only allow up to 2. So it would be similar to this top diagram, but without the bottom portion. So this would encourage building along the natural slope rather than intense, excessive cut and fill and grading. So another portion of the development code update revisions deals with sign regulations for section 27. It deals with temporary non-commercial signs. It is previously limited to 7 square feet in area, not posted longer than 30 days within a 1-year period. And so this is an enforcement problem, because how do you determine when the 30 days start if somebody calls to complain? So we're proposing a change to no larger than 32 square feet in area and no longer than 8 feet in any dimension. And that was in the previous code, and we're putting it back. And we added standards on how it's going to be maintained free of tears, rips, rust, deterioration, or similar condition. And then we pointed out the property maintenance section in the city's municipal code. Section 29, the development code added the election season sign portion in an effort to make the temporary non-commercial sign section more content neutral. So we're increasing the time frame from 60 days prior to the start of the closest future election date to 90 days. This is consistent with the state's business and professional code. And then so we just made this to make it more consistent with what state law requires. And then we added, or we clarified that no such sign shall be placed on private property without the property owner's permission and or approval. That's actually already in the temporary non-commercial signs, and also in both the development code update and also the previous code. So that the portion not allowing in the public right-of-way was added to the code in 2018 through ordinance by the City Council. Another item that's changing is this section 35 of the draft ordinance deals with SB 9 or urban dwelling units. Miriam and I had a meeting with HCD a couple of weeks ago, and it was related to SB 9 and urban dwelling units. They wanted to know how we were applying it, and they stated that the city would have to allow SB 9 units whether or not an urban subdivision or SB 9 subdivision is being proposed. And they stated that per the SB 9 the state's SB 9 guidelines, we have to allow at least 4 units if they're building SB 9 units per single family residential property. So, and I had shown them this draft, and they are okay with this language. A major part of the cleanup is the revisions of the subdivision section. With the development code update, one of the intents was to allow the community development director or designee to approve and both parcel maps and also approve extensions to map to any tentative map. However, when it was adopted, the language was not clear whose authority it was. So this development code update cleanup makes it clear that the community development director has the authority to approve parcel maps, and it also makes it clear that the development director has authority to approve extensions. So on the table is a summary of the assignment of responsibilities on who's in charge of approving what when it deals with map. Although the director is responsible for approving tentative parcel maps, all final maps still have to go to the City Council for approval. And this is consistent with the Subdivision Map Act in state law. With this, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission conduct the public hearing and adopt resolution number 24-6157. If the Planning Commission has any questions, I'm available to answer. Also, I have John Moreland here with Rincon. He is the city's development code update consultant.
Does any commissioners have any questions for our staff?
I have quite a number of questions, but let's just get through the public hearing and then I can ask questions after that.
Okay. Actually, I have a quick question first before the public hearing. Regarding the approval in the planning for the community development approval, in prior code, who's approving the development parcel map and the extension for the parcel map?
The Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you. While we're at it, let's ask another questions regarding SBC 9. You mentioned that we can or allowed up to 4 units. Can staff or perhaps our consultants explain how we come about, and is there a certain size requirement for the 2 primary dwelling units versus the 2 additional ADU?
So the primary dwelling, the house is allowed to stay there. The existing single-family residential house is allowed to stay there. But as far as the SB 9 units, our current code allows up to 800 square feet.
Is that for the ADU or for the primary for the SBC?
That's for the SB 9 units. And also, the way this code is written, we're matching what is allowed for the ADU, which is 800 square feet, and the junior ADU, 500 square feet.
So you're saying the primary for the SB 9 would be 800 square foot. Mm-hmm. The ADU for the SB 9 would be 800 square foot.
That's correct.
And then,
or if they're going to have a junior ADU, it would be 500 square feet.
The junior for the, okay, so it's 500 square foot for the junior, so that's SB 9. What about the primary resident? It can be as, the primary for the very first one can be as large as its original? If a
single family residential lot has an SB 9 unit, then they are limited to these code standards, which is 800 square feet and 500 square for an ADU and 500 square feet for a junior ADU.
What about the 1,200 square foot that was allowed by the original ADU law? That's not allowed?
So SB 9 essentially allows a kind of like lot split with an existing single family dwelling on it. SB 9 has provisions about how much of that building can be demolished. So it would essentially be the existing house would be the primary. And then the 1,200, 800, and 500 would be the other units that could be constructed on the lot.
So you still allow the 1,200 square foot for the ADU, the first ADU, and then the SB 9 would be the 800 square foot for the second ADU.
No. Okay, so if they're only building an if there's an existing house, right, on a single family residential property, and they're building a SB 9 unit, then they're allowed the primary house and the SB 9 unit as the primary units on the property. And they're also allowed to have one ADU per primary unit. So that ADU can either be an 800 square foot ADU or a 500 square foot junior ADU per primary unit. So that they can have no more than 4 units, both primary and accessory per lot, right? But if they are not building an SB 9 unit, then they can have one ADU and that a detached ADU, and that one detached ADU can be 1,200 square feet.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to open public hearing. I have one. Mario?
So cold in here.
All right. I didn't get a chance to read through all of the 328-page document or 330-some-odd page document. Assembly Bill 2533, I see on here, which is amnesty ADU, which is going to be exciting if that does come to West Covina, I guess. Allows for ADUs that are don't necessarily adhere to building code, but just safety, health and safety standards. All right. Nevertheless, I'm actually here to discuss another issue. So good evening, commissioners. My name is Mario Silvavar, and I appreciate the opportunity to address you tonight regarding agenda item 4. I'm here to raise concerns about the amendments to Section 26 of the Municipal Code regarding campaign signs, particularly the changes to the time frame for posting campaign signs and the number of campaign signs allowed per parcel. These changes raise significant questions about fairness and transparency in the recent election. First, I'd like to reference the documents that I printed out for you. Page 3 of the document is a document that I downloaded earlier this year from the city's website. This document, the official campaign sign regulation, states that no campaign sign shall be erected earlier than 60 days prior to an election. However, the recent amendment, as outlined on page 307 of tonight's agenda packet, extend this time frame to 90 days. During the election, I observed that 2 candidates, coincidentally the 2 who won, displayed their campaign signs for 90 days, well beyond the 60-day limit stated in the regulations available to the public. This raises several important questions. When was this change from 60 to 90 days enacted? Why was it made? How was it communicated to all candidates? If this change was not publicly and equitably communicated, it undermines the integrity of the election process and gives an unfair advantage to those operating with advanced knowledge of the amendment. Second, I'd like to reference the amendment on page 308 of tonight's agenda packet, which specifies a maximum of 4 campaign signs per parcel. Yet during the election, I observed that one of the same candidates who posted campaign signs for 90 days also had over 40 campaign signs displayed on and around a single house. This would be a house on Vincent, if you guys know, next to Edison. Won't name names. Was this rule change similarly not communicated to all candidates, or were some candidates simply allowed to ignore the regulations entirely? Lastly, I must address the issue of the city's website. This is page 4. The election and voter information page, which is supposed to serve as a critical resource for candidate and resident, is currently broken. While I cannot confirm whether this issue existed during the election cycle, the inability to access this resource now reflects poorly on the city's commitment to transparency and public access to information. This further raises concerns about whether all candidates had equal access to accurate and timely guidance regarding campaign sign regulations. In conclusion, I respectfully urge the Commission to investigate when and why these amendments to the campaign sign regulations were made, clarify how these changes were communicated to all candidates to ensure fairness, address clear violations such as the excessive number of campaign signs on a single parcel to uphold the integrity of the regulations, and to fix the broken election information page on the city's website to restore public trust and accessibility. Thank you for your time and attention to these important matters.
Thank you. I don't have another resident or applicants regarding speaking in favors or opposing the code. Anyone else that'd like to come up? Seeing none, I will close public hearing and open commission discussions.
I had a number of questions for staff. With regard to the, as it stands in our packet, this would be page 2 where it says discussion. Following is an outline of the proposed changes to the development code. There's the section that says HCD required changes for the housing, housing element. And then it goes through table 2-5, sections 26-49, A2 and 26-212. Do you guys see that? Okay. My question is, I'll go one by one. With regard to table 2.5, the minimum lot size for all multifamily zones is proposed to be decreased to 20,000 square feet. Now that is an HCD requirement, correct? What statutory authority are they relying upon by imposing that requirement?
For that one, it was a feasibility of development for multifamily housing through kind of the negotiation and review process of the housing element. It was required as Housing Policy 31-F of the housing element. So it's essentially a code update to be essentially consistent with the housing element.
Okay, so there's no statutory authority or regulatory authority by which the HCD is relying upon in imposing this, correct?
No objective.
This is purely the product of negotiation, correct?
Correct. For the 20,000, that is correct.
Okay, so effectively, if we don't approve this, then, or if we don't recommend that the city council approves this, then, and the city council decides we're not going to approve this, then we don't have a housing element, right?
Correct. It would be considered that the housing element is out of compliance.
So effectively, all of this stuff, so as far as table 2.5, this is purely commandeering us, correct? That's it, right? I want to just make that very clear for the record.
It was, yeah, it was essentially subject to negotiation, and the thought process from HCD was that it would be more feasible if it was a smaller multifamily site to develop, and that it could potentially be a barrier to housing.
What feasibility studies are they relying upon in making that determination?
Their expertise in doing housing elements from the state.
Okay, well, that's non-responsive. As far as I'm concerned. But in any case, I just want to make it very clear. So in terms of recommending that HCD, or recommending that we do something that HCD is imposing upon us, it's not really a recommendation. It's basically, here's a gun to your head. You have to do this. And if you don't, you're going to lose your ability to do any sort of regulation on housing. Or actually, you're going to lose your entire general plan. That's a fair statement, right?
Yes, I would say so.
Okay. So I guess my only question is, well, why is this included with a whole bunch of stuff that is discretionary or appears to be discretionary? Because I'd rather just have this whole thing be, we can all just sort of go like this. Here you go. Enjoy. And we'll recommend that the city council doesn't do something to get us sued, which isn't a recommendation. It's just common sense. So I don't really know what I'm recommending in terms of how to move forward. I'll go down the others quickly. So the change to sections 26-49A2 and 26-212 sub B ensures that multifamily projects with at least 20% of the units reserved for lower income households are approved by right. There's no statutory authority that HCD is relying upon in imposing that requirement, correct?
On that one, there is. So that is consistent with Senate Bill 684, Assembly Bill 2011, and Senate Bill 330. Okay,
very good. At least there's something that I can attach some meat to. Okay, all right. And then so table 2-12. State law requires that emergency shelters are allowed by right in zones where residential uses are allowed. That area allows the most intense uses amongst the mixed use zones is regional commercial mixed use, RMU. This area includes the Eastland Center and other mixed use commercial properties along Garvey Avenue North, east of the Eastland Center. All other zones require a conditional use permit. So that was just the product of negotiation. That's just sort of the best we could do.
That is also statutory. You are required to allow a emergency shelter by right where residential is permitted.
But the locations were just the product of negotiation, correct?
Correct. There was essentially just identified in the regional mixed use, which was acceptable. And the HCD did allow a conditional use permit for the other mixed use zones.
Got it. And then for the next one is Table 3-2, Section 26-90 sub B2 and 26-118A5. Change the sole reference to CUP to precise plan, CUP, and other entitlement as approved by the Planning Commission or City Council, because not all uses require CUP. I think that's very sensible. But then it gets to, in addition, the parking ratio for multifamily residential uses was consolidated, removed separate requirements for mixed use and condominiums, and the parking ratio for emergency shelters has been reduced to 1 per staff as required by HCD. So with regard to the parking ratio stuff, is that just their determination, or is there statutory authority behind that?
There is, in the emergency shelter, it does say there shall be no parking required for residents.
Okay, and then as far as multifamily residential uses, is that the same? Was that changed in this? I just want to make
yes.
sure.
So that was part of the HCD negotiations.
Okay.
That was I will admit that was more kind of a formatting kind of error as we were kind of go through the first part. We were going to it pretty much impacts the smaller units, the 2-bedroom unit count, the 2-bedroom parking requirements didn't change. It was essentially 2 spaces per unit, but it allowed for smaller parking spaces for the smaller units, which was requested by HCD.
Okay. So just so I'm clear on that, is that a requirement or is that a request?
That was part of the negotiation then. So it's a pretty standard request for them.
So all other cities that have an approved general, housing element, and sort of as a corollary, an approved general plan have gotten the same requirement imposed upon them?
Correct. In my experience, yes.
Okay. All right. And there's no statutory authority for that. They're just doing it, correct?
Yeah, not to my knowledge.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. Going down to the development code cleanup provisions, I wanted to talk about the proposed change to section 26-46 sub D, that the height increase exception for hillside lots. I kind of wanted to go over that because I understand what is intended by the proposed change, but I actually think that you're not really discouraging anything, because fundamentally what's going to end up happening there is you're having a smaller house built in effect, and people are going to still go in and basically dig out to flatten out the lots so that they can have a larger residence. If you don't allow for the stacking of up to 3 different stories, and then perhaps have a limitation, a height limit at the highest level, I just don't see how, based on the highest level relative to other surrounding structures, I just don't see how this is going to do anything that changes how people look at development in our city. I think it's sort of a Band-Aid for a situation that no one is really looking at doing, given the fact that you only have a 2-story, we have a 2-story limit. I just don't see how that's going to change. I mean, tell me why I'm wrong.
It's up to it's really up to the Planning Commission. I can see it either way, but and the Planning Commission can certainly recommend approval of the development the ordinance to the City Council and strike out Section 14. So it's really up to the Planning Commission.
I mean, because here's what I would recommend if I were doing this. I would say, okay, allow up to 3 different stories for hillside builds, and only hillside builds where you have a fairly significant grade. I think this is one of those things where we would have to do some study session on what level of grading would be necessary for us to approve the 3rd story, because otherwise I just don't see how this is going to change anything. So, I mean, for me as is, it's definitely a no. It's just more, I would say, why not add in the ability to do a third story, much as is set up here. So if the goal is to discourage people from digging out and just doing a flat parcel grading setup, I just don't see how you do it without allowing the third story. So otherwise, it's just you're going to get more of the same. I just and the other thing is I would look at that scenario kind of with some questions from the standpoint of foundation and frankly all of the pillaring that you're going to have to go down deeper in order to do it that way. I think having it as is makes more sense than doing that based upon how this is currently structured. But again, my 2 cents. With regard to 26-100 sub C, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, so why all of a sudden is this something that is before us in the context of this? I mean, the thing that bothers me about all of this is that like this whole proposal seems to be making corrections and incorporate required updates to comply with state law, and then commercial portion of the Plan Development Code number 1 for the West Covina portion of the Woodside Village to make development within the PCD1 zoning consistent with the current zoning. I mean, what does that have to do with that? I mean, this looks like this to me looks like we have real notice issues in terms of the discussion of this. I mean, I understand the desire to potentially make this change, but I mean, like, why is it? I mean, this to me looks like how Prop 19 was marketed to the public, and it was disingenuous as all hell. And this is why people voted away certain rights that they had in the Revenue and Taxation Code that they thought that they were getting something new and better. And I just think, why is this related to this? I think it bothers me. So where did this come from? That's my thing. I don't understand.
So this past several months, we noticed that the state law pertaining to election signs allowed 90 days, and the code section here was in conflict with that. And so to comply and to become in line with the state allowing 90 days, this was an attempt to incorporate required updates to comply with state law. So it's to be in line with that.
Sure, I agree with you there. That's the portion I agree with you at. But the problem is that we are wholesale changing the signage requirements otherwise. So instead of having the sign size limits and the number of size limits, being stayed status quo, we're talking about wholesale changes to that stuff. Now, to me, I think the numerosity thing, I think if somebody challenged that, we're going to lose. But on the size of signage, I think it's a perfectly legitimate time, place, and manner restriction. So I'm trying to figure out what is it that caused us to say, well, we're going to get rid of the time, place, and manner restriction that we've had. I would say probably going back as long as I've been alive. And that's my question. All of a sudden we're changing that. I noticed all of a sudden we had much bigger signs in this campaign than I ever saw before. Is it just, political expediency based upon what happened during the last election cycle? I mean, because outside of that, I can't really figure out why.
Staff, does the city have more calls or that prompted this signage
so
change?
with the last election, it was, I guess, more of a code enforcement type deal, where it's been been very difficult to enforce, mainly because, like, for instance, as an example, if somebody had signage on private property, on single-family residential property, and the property is gated, in order for code enforcement to go out there and send them a notice of violation, code enforcement would have to have access to the site and actually measure the signage. Whereas on a different note, if a similar type sign on single-family residential property that is not gated got a complaint and code enforcement went out there, they would be able to just measure it. So it becomes a notion of what appears to be selective enforcement in that sense, as far as the size is concerned. As far as the time frame is concerned, there was some confusion because we have 60 days and state law has 90 days. So we are just making it in compliance with state law so that it's, consistent.
Well, so follow-up question is, okay, so how much enforcement did code enforcement do of this specific ordinance over the last election cycle? How many citations or notice of violations or anything on down the line were handed out?
I didn't get a number from them.
Okay.
So I'm not sure. I know that they had sent out letters for notices of violation, but I'm not sure if they sent out citations.
Okay. So how many letters, and were they sent to campaigns, or were they sent to individual property owners who had the signs on their property?
I believe property owners, but I'm not part of the code enforcement process, so I wasn't involved in notifying the property owners, and they didn't check in with me either whether or not they should be notifying the property owners. The code enforcement division is a totally different department, so I'm not involved in their process.
Okay. Well, I mean, my thing is, I have no problem with making our election enforcement provisions consistent with state law. I think that's probably what we should do. However, if we're talking about a situation where our ordinance is otherwise in compliance with state law, and this is just saying, well, we're updating things to be in compliance with state law, I don't really see that that's what this is attempting to do. This is a pretty significant wholesale change that's kind of buried in 300 pages of changes that are supposedly ministerial, and they're not. That's, to me, I would hope moving forward, if we have stuff like this, we'd break it up, because it just ends up being, look, it bothers me that, as it stands, we don't have a lot of attendance at these meetings to begin with, but, ultimately, there's only three of us now. There's typically five, and all of us have to go through hundreds of pages of stuff in order to prepare. And I'm sure not every commissioner gets a chance to read every single page that's put in front of them. And this is the kind of thing that just I don't know. I understand correcting spelling errors and things like that. That's fine, but this leaves a bad taste in my mouth, frankly. And then let's go on to the non-conforming. Let's see. Hold on one second. I think it's the development code authority to approve tentative parcel maps and extension of time for subdivisions. what I wanted to do, just for more transparency there, so the extension of time aspect of things, is that becoming, is just so that the public generally knows, is that becoming a ministerial process on the administrative side, or is that going to still be something that's going to be coming before the Planning Commission under the new proposal?
It would be ministerial side.
Okay, and what's the length of time that the ministerial side or the administrative ministerial side provides, and at what point in time does it come back to planning?
It's the ministerial side. It's what's written in the code, and I believe 3 2-year extensions of time.
Okay, and that's
already in the code.
Okay, very well. I just wanted to make sure. Okay, so we won't see those types of things coming before us again.
No, the only time that you would see it is if they exceed that 3 allowable extensions of time that the code allows, and so we would bring it back to you as an amendment to that approval.
Okay. Got it.
It's basically like a new whole public hearing and a new whole application.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all the questions I had. I appreciate it.
I actually, it's a great point because this evening we only have, out of 5 normal commissioners, that we only have 2. I'm not sure. I'm sorry. We have 3 commissioners here tonight. Someone is sleeping. But I'm trying to say that, we're missing 2 commissioners, and I wish that regarding this citywide code amendments, because it's affecting the entire city code, I like to see 5 commissioners, and I like to see this being continued until we have 5 commissioners. And besides, this is a recommendations from our commissioners to the city councils for adoptions of the general plan. So to answer Commissioner Lewis' earlier comments regarding the changes and what he's not comfortable with, this is the time that you take to make the changes. If you're not comfortable with certain things, that's why we go through it. And we also work with residents, which are either at home looking at the TV or here, to see if we can together make the changes so that it once it's get into the code or development code, it remains there for a long time until the next time that we make these revisions. The last time that we had this division, I just want to remind all the residents and everyone here as well that a while back it took us 30 years until recently that we actually update this citywide code amendments. So it's very important with all these changes. I like to continue this meeting until at least we have all 5 commissioners, because District 3 and District 1 do not have representations currently. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have a thought on that, because one of the things I'm noticing is that some of these new state law changes become effective January 1, 2025. So what I would say probably makes the most sense is let's try to get the recommendation out as to the stuff that we basically got a gun to our head, move that forward, bring everything else back. That way we're in compliance with state law, don't have any issues with our housing element or anything like that, and because presumably there's going to be one more city council meeting before the end of the year, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and
this is not going to go to this.
Okay, it won't. Okay,
It would.
I assume it'd be probably first meeting of the year. They would probably
no, it would be the second meeting of January.
Okay, all right.
But this update is not on a. Are we on a deadline for this code update?
Yes.
When is the deadline?
Right now.
Yeah, pretty much. That was the thing I was trying to impress upon. Is I don't disagree with you with regard to continuing it. I think we can make a recommendation to the city council adopting this, but leaving out all of the other changes, and then just bringing that back next year.
How many items are state-specific mandated?
I think there's 6. That's what I read.
So you're recommending to,
There are 6 sections.
so you're recommending tonight, for tonight, just approve all the state require.
Chair, if I may, would the Planning Commission be interested in going over the sections and striking out sections that you're not comfortable with approving? Because there are certain changes where we can't even apply certain sections in the code as it should be applied. Like, for instance, the noticing section that shouldn't be an issue with the city council, with the planning commission at the moment. And also there are sections in the subdivision section that where there's no clear authority on who would be approving certain applications. If that's something that we can move forward with this cleanup, we would be a little bit more productive.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I mean, perhaps what we can do is, if you want, just for expediency, like I can go down the list of everything, and then if somebody has an issue with it, we can just pull it, kind of thing.
But as commissioners, we wouldn't know what is state mandated and what's not. Maybe perhaps we can go for Joanne's to go through some of the items, and if one that we are not state related, we can pull that and come back later.
So I have the code or the proposed ordinance on the projector, and then I'll go ahead and.
And I would recommend in the future if we can have these separated.
If I can just offer a little bit of context, there were 800 bills passed by the governor this year. So if I
understand. I understand. And
yeah, so
there's a lot of work that's gone into this. But for us, I mean, if we're here to decide on something, it's nice to know what we're allowed to decide on.
So the section is about the PCD 1, section 6. So that was, I guess I would say it's a no-brainer, just consistent to whatever we have. Section 7, 8, 9, and 10, it's just capitalizations of certain titles. So that shouldn't be an issue either. And then Section 11, does the Planning Commission have any issues with including a definition for new structure and also unclassified use permits?
I have no issue with that. I think that makes sense. Like I said, I think a lot of this stuff can go forward. I think it's just stuff that is not really cleanup. That's the issue.
And the only reason I think is just so we can have a little more time. Can we?
Right. Well, I think what Joanne was saying is like some of these we have just definitional holes in our code, and we don't want to have that. So, like, for example, they're defining unclassified use permit, which I don't have a problem with, and I don't have a problem with defining what is considered a new structure. That's all that.
Right.
That's all that's doing. So I don't think that a lot of these are offensive in any way, shape, or form. I think it's just we need to excise the ones that are require actual consideration. So I'm with you through 11.
Okay, and then this is putting section 12, just putting back what was unintentionally deleted in the R1 section.
I think that's fine.
And then section 13, adding RA. This used to be area districts.
Right. I remember that, and I was confused as to why it was gone at the time, but everyone seemed so convinced that R1 was where it was going to be. I said, okay, 14 needs to be X'd.
Okay, so we can delete 14. I'll do it right now. Yes. And then 15, we're adding, I guess, new two-story structures to the setbacks. The way it's written in the past, and also with the development code update, which just adopted how it was written in the past, there is no separate required second floor setback. It was just being applied that way. So it just clarifies that additions and new second floor homes have to comply with the two-story setback.
I don't want you to have to negotiate that point with residents. That's not fair.
Yeah. So we just add. And then this is state required with our housing elements, section 16. So there's no.
Yeah, that's the gun to your head one. Okay.
Yeah. 17 as well. 18 as well.
Yep.
And what is this? Oh, it's clarifying that certain accessory structures do not require an administrative permit. This is in the accessory structure section, and there's sections throughout the R1 that says certain accessory structures, like accessory structures over 1,000 square feet requiring an administrative permit. This is just clarifying that if it doesn't say it requires an administrative permit, it doesn't require one. So
that's fine.
I don't think that's an issue. And then deleting the urban dwelling units there because it's not, the state doesn't consider it as an accessory structure. It's considered a primary structure. And then in this table, we're deleting the references to maximum lot coverage in putting in underlying zone because this table is for all accessory structures, whether it's single family residential or multifamily residential. And so we're deleting the maximum lot coverage column because each zoning has its own maximum lot coverage, so it'll be too confusing to have it included in this table.
Okay, I think that's fine.
And then solar energy systems, for solar panels, we added, I fixed the organization of it, and then also added reflection angles and glare, that they shouldn't be oriented towards adjacent properties or the public right-of-way, and the property owner is responsible for installing anti-glare panels or film if it's discovered that it does glare onto the street or other properties.
I think that's fine too.
I'm not offended by it. It's more a question of I've seen some development that I'd like to discuss about that, but I don't think that this prohibits going forward with it. I just want to make sure that we have some sort of detailed analysis about that because, again, I realize the desire to use Hillside for that, and I just want to make sure that it's not just a passing discussion. I understand staff has done a great deal of work on this, but I'd like that to come back as well. Okay.
That's fine. So
26-73 is coming back?
So I'll eliminate, I'll keep the organization in this section. I'll keep the renumbering and organization because the current numbering doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So, but I'll eliminate this for now. And then just the spelling of turf, it was spelled turn. And then section 23, including like something that's measurable in the parking for motorhomes or accessory recreational vehicles. Is there an issue with the Planning Commission with that? That's good.
No, I think that's fine.
Okay. And then this table, I don't believe there was an issue with eliminating the CUP and replacing it with with precise plan CUP or other entitlements.
No, that makes sense.
And then a portion of this table in the residential section deals with the multifamily emergency shelters parking, and this is one of the state requirements. In section 25, related to the previous table, also a state requirement. 26, just the grammar safety instead of safely.
Right.
And then section 27, and this is the one that one of the ones that you guys had an issue with, the Planning Commission had an issue with, right?
Correct.
So I'll go ahead and remove that. I don't believe there would be an issue. Does the Planning Commission have an issue of removing or there? Section 28.
I think that's fine.
Okay, and then section 29, this is the other
Correct.
item that was an issue, so. And then 30, I don't believe that's an issue, it's spelling.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then just renumber, the next one is just 31, just changing the organization. And this is already somewhere here. Hold on. Is already at 6, but it applies to both electric vehicle charging station and solar carports. So it got renumbered to C. I don't believe there's an issue there either. And then 32 is required by state. And then just, and this is also 33 state law. They said it's a and not an or. So we're changing that to what the state is requiring. And then, let's see, this is the new state law regarding
34, 35.
34, 35,
Fine.
and 36, and 37 deals with non-conforming uses and structures. I added and or in conjunction with, because not all non-conforming uses are inside structures. There are non-conforming uses that are outside of the structures.
Right.
So I don't think there's an issue there. And then the noticing.
38 looks fine.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
understood. 38 is just long.
Yeah, it's very long, but it's going to require more noticing than what's required by state law.
39 looks fine.
Okay. And then 40, continuation of the public noticing, just to make it the revocation section consistent with the public noticing that's required by state, and also our notification section. I don't believe there would be an issue there.
I remember discussing that, so yeah, that's good.
And then this starts, code amendments, community development director and city attorney as people that are allowed to, or as authority that's allowed to agendize certain code amendments.
That's 41 or
41, yes.
anyone else can?
By applicant, yes.
So no, we cannot agendize anything?
You can. The Planning Commission by resolution.
Oh.
The applicant, an applicant, member of the public that's applying for a change, a resolution by the City Council, a resolution by the Planning Commission, and then the Community Development Director or City Attorney.
Can we bring this back?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Sorry, did you want to bring it back?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
yes.
in
We're
agreement.
going to bring it back.
Bring it back,
Okay.
yeah.
And then, this is just changing correcting the section in the code. So I don't think there's an issue with 42. 43 grants the Community Development Director authority over approving parcel maps and the Planning Commission authority over approving track maps.
I'd like to pull that one.
Okay.
Yeah, there's some lack of specificity on that one and 44 that needs to be discussed.
$45 as well?
And then 45 as well?
Yes.
Okay.
All subdivision items, can you pull all that, Joanne?
Okay. And then I think that's all the subdivision items. That's the end of
Through
it.
51, I believe.
Up to 51, yes.
Up to and including 51, yeah. Got it.
And then that's the end of it. Oh, and also the reason why staff included the Community Development Director as authority over subdivision tentative parcel maps, because under state law, certain residential subdivisions are required to be approved ministerially.
Understood.
Okay, I think we're good.
Yeah, I just had one thing that assuming we have sort of a consensus going on the items that were pulled, I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 24-6157 with the items removed that we all discussed, and if any member of the commission requested it pulled, I am in agreement with that being removed from the resolution. The only thing I want to add to the proposed resolution is this would be the third paragraph, or between the second whereas and the third whereas. I would just say, whereas the Planning Commission makes no determination as to the advisability of any state law that is being imposed upon the City Council and or this Planning Commission by approving this resolution.
So this resolution, we're not approving it. It's a recommendation that we'll
Excuse me,
make.
by recommending, by making this recommendation. We'll amend it to say by making this recommendation.
Thank you. Would that be a motion?
Yeah, yes. And I just want to make sure it's clear, Madam City Attorney. Was that clear for you?
I'll revisit the video. 'Cause
Okay,
it's a lot.
fair
And do we
fair
have-
enough.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Joanne, could you do roll call, please?
Commissioner Becerra,
Aye.
Commissioner Lewis,
Aye.
Commissioner Hang, or Chair Hang.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. So it's recommendation. It's going to move to City Council. Thank you.
Oh, do we need a return date? That's for the other aspects. Is that going to come back? First meeting, second meeting?
No, it'll be renoticed. So.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Since it's a state citywide code amendment, it's going to
It'll be
be.
in the newspaper
Got it. Thank you.
and the website.
So
And the notification now is 20 days.
20 days now.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So non-hearing items. Do we have any non-hearing items? Okay. Seeing none, we have commission reports, comments, and miscellaneous items. Well, actually, I have something. I wanted to say, since we don't have two commissions this evening, one of them moved to City Council and one of them is being replaced later on. So I like to say that from all the commissioners in our city, we are so appreciative of your help with being our commissioners for the last 4 years. So I think some of them are here 4 years and
We survived.
So you're part of the commissioners who were helping with updating our general plan for the entire city, which was, like I said earlier, that lasted, the last update was like 30 years ago. So it hasn't been updated until recent years. So we went through a few updates since then, which also, cost the city some time with consultants and all that. It's like over $500,000 to update our general plan, and with many residents' input. So we also went through many changes with ADUs and all that. So I just wanted, make thanks to all the hard works, and we were able to complete these requirements and meet all the deadlines to the states, which sometime like this evening, we don't have that much time, and the stack of materials that the past commissioner also have to go through. So not only the stack of materials that we have to go through, also sometimes the research that the commissioners have to go through and to come up with you can say conclusions of how we should proceed. So we couldn't have gotten, those amazing results without the help of our gracious volunteers, like the past commissioners that is no longer here. Not only did you contribute to many of the plans for the businesses and residential development every month in addition, but, you also now are part of our development code, which you made for updating our cities, not just for today, but for the future years. I'm not sure if it's going to last 30 years before some code changes and amendment changes, but, I like to, West Covinas are honored that you choose to help us carry out our missions. We hope to see you again at any of our upcoming events or volunteer opportunities with many commission positions. So I sincerely appreciate your help and delegation to our city. Thank you again to the past commissioners that were here. So that's for the commission reports, comments, and miscellaneous item. Community Development Director reports. Do we have anything, Joanne?
We do not, but tonight's the last planning commission before next year. So I'm wishing everybody to have a happy holiday and happy new year. And we'll see everybody next year.
Wonderful. Are there any city council actions to report?
No, there's no city council actions.
Okay. If seeing none, again, happy holidays and happy new year until next year. Thank you all, everyone, for all the wonderful work, and enjoy your holiday.
I'd like to thank staff as well. Thank you for everything. You guys are always so supportive. Even tonight, thank you, Joanne. You just, you're a trooper. You went through every single one just to try to make this happen. You're an asset to West Covina, and we thank you for Rosemary and Miriam and all of you. Thank you so much, and Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, and good evening.